Hi there. Patricia Lindner is joining me from Germany, where she is a soul alchemist, creative and spiritual muse, an intuitive mindset magician. She is a coach who will guide you on your journey. Patricia has over 17 years of experience in teaching, training, coaching, and healing. Also has 5 years of extensive experience in building a successful business. Her unparalleled approach of combining highly professional and profound knowledge with creative modalities, energy psychology, healing modalities, and human design is groundbreaking and life-changing. Patricia is a certified practitioner in logosynthesis, and thank you so much for joining me today, Patricia.
Thank you so much for having me, Cathy. That is such an honor to be with you in this amazing interview. And I can feel that this is going to be a deep dive.
We never know sometimes where the conversation leads us, but I'm excited to see what comes up for us. Yeah. So I always like to start these conversations by discovering how you were introduced to logosynthesis and what made you curious to learn more about the model.
Yeah, that is such a great question, because this was a story. I need to tell you, this was a story. So that was, over 6 years ago. And I wanted to really develop myself in every area of my life, because I was this big head person, always having those narratives in my head, negative thoughts in my head that were blocking me. And so I booked this amazing renowned coach in Munich. And so that made me drive over 1 hour by car. And so, but I wanted her to help me through this next level issue. And then after lesson or session 6, she came up to me and she said, "Mrs. Lindner, I apologize, but I can't help you with your issues. Whenever I work with you, in the end of the session, you fall back into your old pattern, and that feels like you are incurable." And I was like, oh my gosh, I am incurable. So I need to stay stuck where I am. I need to really live with my blockages. And I really, I burst into tears. And so she apologized, but she said, "I can't continue the work with you. Look for someone who can help you, but I feel like there is no cure for you." And so I jumped into the car, still crying, and drove back home. And then I got stuck in a traffic jam. And I took my cell phone and I Googled how to get out of the head, how to resolve those issues that I had, how to overcome blockages. And then I came across a book written by Ulrike Scheuermann from Berlin, who works with logosynthesis. And I immediately ordered the book. And I read it really fast. And then I decided I need to call Ulrike. And so I had some sessions, logosynthesis sessions with her. And surprise, surprise, my blockages went away. And I was so puzzled. And I couldn't believe that this simple but not simple technique or tool, I didn't know how to really talk about it, could help me overcome my issues. And then she suggested, "Patricia, why don't you get started and take the basic course?" And then, this turned out to be a long-term relationship with logosynthesis. And I became practitioner and instructor because I find that this is the only... and I don't want to limit it to saying methodology, you know what I mean? It is more than a methodology, so it is the only thing.
Yeah, sometimes we say it's such a comprehensive model, right? Like Willem describes it, a model, a system, because it is much more than a technique. Often we'll see people, myself included, it's like, just give me the sentences, right? Because I know the sentences can resolve that block. And then yet when there's so much more to it than just those sentences or just that technique, but we can work from just those sentences and just those technique to resolve issues that really do seem incurable and that maybe we've lived our whole life with as being incurable. So I can certainly relate to your experience, right? That there's those patterns that I adopted that quite often served me very well, but they also could feel pretty intense for me and for people around me at times.
Yeah. And logosynthesis turned out to be the only model that I have no doubt about. And this is an indicator that it is really good, because I am really doubtful by nature. I always dive into, what is this all about? Oh, and I find something that I dislike, and now it is over 6 years and I haven't found anything. I like the holistic approach, and that it is a model for so many areas and such a big personal growth and development.
Yeah, I remember when I first started reading it, and I said to Will, this really intrigues me because, like you, I tend to doubt things or question things, and I want to see the science behind it all. And there was no science really to prove that it worked or not, but I could use it, and I knew that something shifted. And what was so beautiful for me was the subtlety of it, right? Because it's not about changing me, it's resolving the blocks that get in the way of being me. And so that subtle and the calmness that came with it. So, yeah.
No drama approach.
Yeah, and I especially did not like to talk about my issues. One, I did not like to really acknowledge I had issues because other people were the ones with the issues. I didn't particularly like to talk about issues because quite often things that we're reacting to or things that we're struggling with in everyday life involve other people, and they might frustrate us, but it's our reaction that's so sometimes we end up making it about them when really it's a block that we're struggling with, but it doesn't have to be there.
I totally understand what you talk about.
So you describe your work as a passion to guide professionals on a journey to magnificence. So I love that. Can you tell us more about this passion?
Yes. So this is another story. So today, Cathy, you make me really get into storyteller's mode.
I love it.
So when I stopped working as a teacher and teacher's trainer, I was supposed to do nothing, but that's not my characteristics and my way. And so I did a business course. I immediately thought I could really change from being employed to maybe turning over and being self-employed, but I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship, nothing. And so I did this German business course and then added several others. So I spent a fortune on business courses. And the first one, she had a guided meditation. That was almost 5.5 years ago. And she led me into the heart space where she said, there is your purpose. And I closed my eyes and I sat there and I entered my heart space. So it was a longer meditation, but I want to put it in a nutshell. And what I saw was black, dark space.
And doesn't sound magnificent.
That didn't sound magnificent at all. So it was like, okay, there's darkness in my heart space. What does this mean? I thought I'm a person that spreads light and darkness, no purpose. And I was a bit frustrated, but I stayed in this meditation. And then I thought about maybe I could intentionally light up the space. And then just with my inner eye and this intention, I grabbed some matches and I lit them, and then I saw a cave filled with treasure troves. And behind those treasure troves were people.
Wow.
And I immediately got it. And it is like, I lit up the space for other people to see their magnificence. But I didn't come up with that 5.5 years ago. I just recently, this year, beginning of this year, through years and years of trial and error, I came up, this is my purpose, and it has been my purpose, and this is so true. I can see behind those masks and pierce the persona of people, and I want to really tap into their magnificence so they can discover their magnificence, they can see the full potential, and they see their uniqueness. And magnificence does not mean that everything is good and amazing all the time. For me, it means that everyone knows about their challenges and their strength and accepts and loves their uniqueness and contributes to this higher purpose to serve others. I think they have to bring forth their magnificence to feel fulfilled and to serve humanity.
That ties in so beautifully with the whole foundation of logosynthesis, right? Because the foundation is that each of us is essence. We are life energy. We are born with a life purpose, and things happen in our life. We're surrounded in a culture that may block us from knowing what our purpose is. And the work with logosynthesis is to resolve those blocks, shift that frozen energy, or kind of ignite our true self, so that that we can better connect with that purpose. So, yeah, that magnificence approach ties in so beautifully from my perspective. So then I'm curious, what role does logosynthesis play in your work to support people in finding their magnificence?
It plays a huge role because, as I said in the beginning, it is the only technique, tool, or model that I don't doubt. And whenever I learned something new, I thought about logosynthesis. How could I apply logosynthesis? How could I make an existing technique, model, modality, whatever you name it, how could I improve it, or how could I add some value by applying logosynthesis? And so, to begin with ancestral healing, I apply it to help people transform, transmute, or change their patterns. And I even think of epigenetic patterns by applying logosynthesis, something that is long held in the ancestral lineage and affects them. That could be in their money mindset and how much they can earn, or how much abundance they have or prosperity they have in their lives. That could be something around health issues. That could be around finding their purpose. And there are so many other things around this ancestral healing. Also, I do apply it when I work with human design, and I connect logosynthesis to human design, because I don't know how many of your audience knows about human design. There are those open centers, and just in a nutshell again, openness allows people and factors from the outside to manipulate or condition the energetic blueprint. And so I think this is so amazing to really help people decondition the open centers where they feel unworthy, or maybe they need to hold back in the throat center and don't dare to speak up. And I can apply logosynthesis. And so for me, in whatever way I work, even when I work creatively and they have those creative blockages, I just apply logosynthesis, and people are so stunned by what it does in this short amount of time and how sustainable the work is.
Yeah, so it is. I always say, it's that immediate and lasting impact because we're working with mental imagery, we're working with memories, beliefs, and fantasies. And so that can really shift. And like you mentioned, a lot of times with ancestral healing, we can say, we can maybe recognize some of the trauma that we experience from our ancestors. For me personally, a lot of that I didn't recognize, I didn't pay any attention to. And yet when I go kind of layer by layer, it's like, oh, I didn't realize the impact. But you don't have to stay frozen in that. And one of the things that came to my mind as you were speaking about ancestral healing is, people might be quite inclined to say, okay, like, where do I start with this? Like, if I've got all this trauma in my background, if I've got all these issues in my everyday life, like, where do I start? And so, I always kind of say, start with what's bothering you now, what's most predominant in your life. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
That was as if we are two people, one mind. I thought about what is bothering them now, and when they are open to doing a little meditation in the beginning when I work with my clients, then I try to let them focus with this meditation on what is interesting and relevant right now. Because oftentimes they hop from one to the next to the other, and then when they go inside, and I just let them picture their issues, then it's like, oh, this is the heavy load that I'm just dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And this is what Willem said, just go layer by layer and don't grab the plate that is underneath like 10 or 20 plates and crush everything. And so I'm so happy because sometimes, and I don't know if you can relate to that, when you work with someone and you intuitively get what it's all about, then I feel like, oh, I could tell them that is about this and that, but they are at the top layer. And then I think it is so important that they go layer by layer and that we don't take the shortcut.
Because there's so much in this work that is about being the guide and following, isn't it? Like when we do the work, it's not for me to tell somebody what their issue is and give them the sentences. It's about listening where they're at and allowing them to connect with that and connect with the mental imagery so that they can resolve that layer. And, Willem often says it's about taking the small steps as opposed to trying to climb up to the top of the ladder without, with some rungs missing. And sometimes that can cause more distress. But when people follow that, and what I really love about it is it's not about me offering advice. I remember Miriam Nordeman saying when she works with parents, she's like, you know what to do. In your heart, you know what the right path is. So when we resolve the blocks, you can get to that space where you can be present and know rather than reacting out of worry and fear and anger.
Absolutely. And just when listening to you, I thought about a past client. She was, and now I can say she was a lawyer in corporate America, and she wanted to change her job, get out of this soul-sucking career. And she booked me for, it was almost half a year. And then I thought, we can do that. And I was eager to help her with getting out of it because I saw it was really heart and soul breaking what she experienced. And we went layer by layer. And maybe this is just something that people want to hear or need to hear right now. At the end of this maybe, it was 6 months. She did not leave her career. And I was not disappointed, but there was this air of disappointment. I couldn't help her. Maybe I couldn't help her. Maybe I didn't do enough. So there was this self-doubt. And just a couple of months ago, and that is now half a year later, 3/4 of a year later, she called me and she said, Patricia, imagine what? I did this, and that. And finally, just last week, I resigned and I left my career. And so she needed to do this and she needed to get rid of that. She needed to resolve that. And then she was ready and she said, I'm so grateful for your work because you planted the seed and you did the basic work that made it all happen. And I'm so grateful. And I was like, yes, now I see that. And now, so I think that is exactly what you just mentioned. We just need to give it the time it takes.
Yeah, and often because, sometimes I go on LinkedIn, you read all the topics, right? Like people quitting jobs and people quitting relationships and people needing to get out. And I worked at Kraft Foods and Heinz bought Kraft, and there was a lot of layoffs and that. And I used Logosynthesis just on my reactions at the time so that I was in a better space on it as opposed to reacting to it all. And so when it comes to things with quitting, quite often, when I work with people that are struggling in a relationship or struggling in a job, once they do the work with Logosynthesis, it's not about giving them the power to leave. Sometimes those relationships are the most important relationships, or your work, you need a job. Like, it's not like we can afford to live in this world without money. So, sometimes it's a matter of accepting it as it is and not feeling the stress associated with it. And to me, that's quite powerful.
Yeah, and oftentimes it opens up space for something new, and then you can leave, or then maybe things change, and then you make up your mind not to leave. So, yeah.
So you're trained in and work with human design systems, and you offer people this recognizable framework to guide their transformation. So can you tell us what attracts you to this model? And you mentioned that you work with both human design systems and Logosynthesis. So could you tell us a little bit how you about the model and how you work with it?
I need to laugh because this is the last system or method or tool that I added to my plate, and there were many, many, many before, and I was somehow resistant to or resisting human design. I came across it before I came across Logosynthesis, so that was almost 10 years ago. I was like, no, this is another thing to box people in. I don't want to deal with it. And so I put it aside, and just 4 years ago, it came my way. Whenever I opened my computer and someone talked and a friend said, do you know about human design? And then I felt like I need to dive into that and check it out, giving it a second chance. And so I decided to take some levels of, I always want to say Logosynthesis, human design levels, courses to get the basics and the foundation, and then a little advanced teaching and training. And then I bought all the books that I could find because I found it is not boxing people in. And that's what attracted me after this first phase of not liking it. It opens people up to so much more. It is a validation. It helps them decondition blockages, false narratives, and it helps them to see the bigger picture that is like a connection to something they can't see right now. And it is something that is not applied like, and this is what is out there. And I think maybe my resistance was because you can type in all your dates and date of birth and time of birth and place of birth, and then they send you those 80 pages of a report, and you put it into your cupboard, and then there is nothing going on for you. I saw that it has the potential to let you allow to live your design when you decondition with the help of logosynthesis, what is blocked, what is conditioned, and then you can access a much bigger field. And there is always more and more to that. And I don't know if this makes sense. That is what made it attractive in the end. And now I really love it, and I use it very intuitively. I follow the main rules that Raw Guru who said, but I added my own flavor.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of models, and I know I've Arian Ingende, I also interviewed him recently, and he works with human design systems as well. And what I hear from people that do use the model is they like it because it helps give people a perspective that they can kind of visualize where they are at this point in time and where they can go. And it works well, like logosynthesis integrates well with it because it does help to resolve those blocks that get in the way. So, and my understanding is they're both energy models. So instead of big thinking cognitive processes or big to-do lists, it's more intuitive, more energetic that a lot of people really gravitate towards.
Right. And then I just thought about another big factor that I love about it. When I work with kids, and sometimes I do, as my background is teacher and teacher's trainer, or parents, when they have issues with parenting, human design prevents parents, and I don't know if this is a great wording, but it prevents parents from conditioning their kids because they understand their design better. And they do not overreact. They do not put pressure on their kids, but they understand their design. And so I think that is a great step into a liberated future, because otherwise those conditioned kids, and I just think about myself, need to do all the work and then get told that they are not curable by this coach that I needed to really hire.
Yeah, and I like as a parent, and I have two daughters, and I always say, one is my clone and the other is Dave's clone, and I never know which one is harder to parent, the one that's just like me or the one that is just like Dave, because quite different personalities, and both absolutely wonderful. And what I found, again, this is more from logosynthesis than human design, but what the work that I did was to allow me to actually recognize how different both individuals were. And instead of trying to clone them into a mini-me, it allowed them to more space. Like I wasn't as reactive with everything because, as younger children, I tended to be, whether it's controlling, reactive, but I had pretty firm beliefs as to what I had to do to support my children to go through the school system, to go through sports, to go through, just life in general. And that's froze a lot of energy, I guess, and it limited me as a parent, but it also limited my kids because of the intensity of my reactions sometimes. So, yeah, I think parenting, whether it's the human design systems and how it approaches allowing us to see our children as children and ourselves as ourselves. I think that is very powerful because sometimes our head can't get us there. I think it needs more of an energetic approach.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And I think that is from a belief systems, like Willem's working on a new book about shaping reality and the courage to create and dealing more along the belief systems. And those belief systems can really blind us and keep us stuck. So, yeah.
Yeah, speaks a lot to me. Can't wait for this new book to come out.
I've been using the protocol a bit just as, just to test it. And it's, it's a little different approach, but extremely powerful and insightful and subtle. So, yeah. So, do you have any examples of, what a transformation could look like? Any client examples you might be able to share? How you help people discover their magnificence?
Yes. So I take the first one that came to my mind, and just currently I'm really focused on money magnificence, and maybe this is the best example to take. I worked with this, again, American lady, and she was a successful entrepreneur back then. That was a couple of years ago. She did not know about logosynthesis, and I introduced her to it. And after getting to know her better, we worked on her issue. And as you said, she really could not name the issue that is blocking her from reaching the next level. And she felt like, I feel like a scam. I feel dirty when I earn more money, and that keeps me from taking the next level. And so she could not tell why this was, and that was great, but she was so visual. She said, you know what, when I talk about all of that, and I don't talk about the whole session, but she says to really picture what it did. She said, I always feel like standing in this tunnel, and this is like this straight tunnel around me, and it is covered with charcoal. And I'm locked, I'm stuck in this tunnel, and everything is full of charcoal. That is what I have when I think about money. And we applied logosynthesis to this picture. And then she said, what happened? The charcoal is still there, but I can see there's something underneath. And so over the course of 1 hour, this tunnel, so it was a straight tunnel, how she explained it, it cleared entirely. So it was stage by stage. And then she said in the end, and that still touches me, she said, you know what I see? I'm so moved. I can see the reflection of my beauty in this glass around me. It is like having this brighter view and seeing the reflection of who I am. And I'm still connected with her. And she said this was such a game changer when it came to money and how she felt around money. And I think this is impressive.
Yeah, and you make a couple of really good points there, because when we work with logosynthesis, often that mental imagery shifts in layers. So what you described, until the distress is completely gone around the issue. And what I always find interesting is that an hour session seems to be like sometimes I could be there at 45 minutes or 50 minutes thinking, how is this ever going to resolve at the end? And then magically at the end, it's resolved. Like there's one more round of sentences and it's like the issue is cleared. So I always find that quite interesting. But the other piece around it as well is that often it is metaphor. So sometimes we talk memories, but it can also be metaphors that show up. So, I remember one person, it was a tiger in a cage, and then kind of freeing that tiger. And, that doesn't make sense as to why that would come up. And yet that metaphor was so powerful and so liberating.
I love when people come up with metaphors. I can do the work when they have memories, but I'm always impressed. And oftentimes people are so shy and they say, there is this mental image, and it doesn't make sense. And I say, just share it with me if you want to. I don't judge it because I love those mental images. I love them.
Yeah. And quite often at the end, it may end up pulling together and have some meaning, right? And it doesn't have to mean anything to me. And that's the beauty of it. I don't have to analyze it when I'm working with someone. I can just go with it. And I think the more, because there's a lot of new research that's coming out around mental imagery and emotional distress. And mental imagery isn't really something that we talk about a lot. Sometimes it's like, well, that can kind of seem crazy, right? So we don't talk about it. But I think the more that we recognize it's a natural human response, and we can work with it and shift it, it's very empowering. So
it is. And I think everyone should allow those images, because kids, when you work with kids, I don't know if you experienced that as well. I once worked with I think it was a 7-year-old girl, and she had those fears around mathematics. And she said, whenever I think of mathematics, I think of a red snake. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Yes, there is this dangerous red snake. And we did logosynthesis, and she did not even judge logosynthesis or her mental images. And in the end, she said, did I have an issue with mathematics? And I don't know what red snake meant.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds very typical, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm curious because you have the Magnificence podcast, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your inspiration for the podcast and what you want your listeners to take away from that podcast.
Yeah, and it is in a stage that takes me to a new place, maybe. But first of all, Magnificence is an empowerment podcast that strikes a match and shines the light on the magnificence of my guests and also the magnificence of the listeners. And I want people who are on my show to really feel, sense, and see how magnificent they are, because I feel this is my part. And I talked about the meditation into my heart space. This is my mission, to really help people in this world see and nourish them when it comes to seeing their magnificence. And for now, and I'm at episode 17 or 18 right now, I put people into the limelight, and I wanted them to see their magnificence, to shine and share it into the world, like radiating their magnificence and giving those who watch the show or listen to the show this idea, oh, I'm magnificent too. I'm unique. I'm an individual person that is magnificent. Now I feel like I need to add another layer, and I want to have people on the show, like right now, that share about what they do, and I point out and focus on their magnificence when I look through the lens of human design and my intuitive abilities. And then I want to have people who struggle with some issues, some blockages, and maybe, and I'm not quite sure if this is what works out, but this is my plan. I want people to be coached in 1 hour, maybe with a mental image that disappears when I apply logosynthesis, or maybe I do some ancestral guidance or whatever is necessary, and I can pull out whatever is necessary. And I would love to share this every once in a while when people are on my show. And so I think this is a great layer to share what is possible.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm excited because I am going to talk to you later as well. And I am interested in actually experiencing it. So I look forward to that. And I also think, because, I tend to interview a lot of people that are professionals, the practitioners, master practitioners, trainers in logosynthesis, so they can share from a professional standpoint what is possible. But there's also so many people that want to share their experience about unlocking their potential in work and life. And so I'm 100% with you about flipping it to share what people are discovering in their life struggles and how those struggles don't have to be so permanent and feel so intense, because quite often we're led to believe that we have to learn to live with it. And
yeah, and especially when it comes to spiritual entrepreneurs or healers or heart-centered coaches, I see there are big blockages around money. There are big blockages around visibility, speaking up, showing up, and they have so many gifts, so much to share, so much to contribute, so much to make an impact in this world, and they hold back and they hide in the closet. And I would love to be a part of their unfolding.
wow. Yeah, and even piece where a lot of energy is frozen is just the words that we use in the healing area, right? So I know my background isn't in this area, and my initial reactions when I was introduced to logosynthesis, I just wanted something to help me get through, my day, a little less stress and a little less reactive. And I was immersed in a field of professionals working with trauma. So here in Halifax, Willem had come every year and trained professionals that were working with trauma. And for me, that felt quite intense. And yet the work was so important, but it wasn't something that we really had a good language with. And even the word logosynthesis, a lot of people struggle with all the things that come up when we use that word, or it's a new word. I don't know what it means. How do I use it? And so the vibrancy that you bring to it is very exciting for me, because I think there is so much vibrancy in the community, and like you said, it is kind of hidden and blocked right now. And as it comes forward, you can see it unfold, and it's just a kinder, gentler place to me. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So how can people get in touch with you about your work?
So first of all, they can go to my website, which is www.patricialindner.com. I also am on LinkedIn. That is my favorite place to hang out. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I like it, but I'm preferably on LinkedIn. And so I would love to really have connection calls and get to know lots of people that haven't connected with me yet, because that is another mission I thought about, really spreading this web around the world, or creating this web of connections. That is something that lights me up.
Wow. Thank you. So if we're wrapping things up, can you maybe let people know what a key message is that you would like them to take away after this conversation?
As I already said, and I want to stress this, there is magnificence in everyone. There is magnificence in you, Cathy. There is magnificence in me, and in everyone who watches and who doesn't watch or listen to our interview. And I think our only purpose is to bring this magnificence forth. And even if you are in an episode or a phase where you feel like, oh, I'm so stressed out, and you suffer from low self-worth or low self-love, just remember there is magnificence somewhere hidden, and maybe we only need to shine the light on it so that you can see it, sense it, feel it, embrace it, and utilize it.
Wow, that's awesome. That is awesome. I'm so inspired by this conversation, Patricia. I really enjoyed it. So
Thank you. I enjoyed it too. It was so, as I said, it was a deep dive. And I'm so grateful that you invited me.